This is Jennifer Gill reporting from London, England. Well, now, round England, or in fact round the whole of Britain, there are hundreds of homes, stately homes, castles, old buildings open to the public. Some of them have an atmosphere from the past, and in fact are a great source of hunting to ghost hunters. Now, with me at the moment is Mr. Tom Corbett, who has in fact been round many of these homes and written a book about it, or his findings have been put into a book. Now, Mr. Corbett, a lot of ghostly phenomena are in fact explained away by very logical people as accidents of light, of sound, of a situation. How do you explain away, for instance, a headless horse? I know there's a story of a ghost, I think it's in Norfolk, driving up to an old house, which is a carriage pulled by headless horses. Now, how would you explain this?
Well, I don't accept in myself the thought of a headless horse. I think that sometimes we may see a ghost before it's completed its building up process. For instance, I had a cottage in Sussex, and I had a strange experience there. I walked across a farmyard, and a pair of women's feet walked across the yard in front of me. Now, if I had waited long enough, and if my boxer dog hadn't kicked up such a row, this form of a woman would have built up into a complete woman, and not just a pair of boots.
Were you in fact frightened at all, or do you ever get frightened on these occasions?
No, I don't get frightened. At least I've never been frightened. I'm not altogether fond of the dark when I'm alone, because I do think that spirits can come very close to you, and that they can sometimes overshadow you to the extent that they can influence you. From time to time, I think this happens quite often, where a murder is committed, for instance. You come across a weak character who is easily used by a vindictive spirit, which we must have quite a number of. For instance, people who are executed and feel that they're innocent and so on. I think these are the people who still roam in no man's land and who are capable of getting their own back, so to speak, on somebody unsuspecting.
Well, now, your mentioning executions reminded me of probably the most packed of history and events such as these, the Tower of London. Have you ever been there and found a ghost?
I've never been to the Tower of... I've been to the Tower of London in the daytime as a visitor, but I would love to go to the Tower of London at night. I've been told by various people who've done guard duties there that it's nothing new to find a guardsman lying flat on his back where he's seen something and fainted.
Although I don't think I'm frightened of them, I don't think I'd really choose. Probably it's auto-suggestion to stay the night in a haunted house. Thank you very much, Mr. Corbett.
Pleasure.
And this is Jennifer Gill signing off from London, England. This is Jennifer Gill reporting from London, England. Well, with me at the moment is Mr. Tom Corbett, whose interesting journey round some of the stately homes of England. It's been a stately ghost tour, and they have been going to some of the haunted houses. Mr. Corbett, there are in fact many types of ghosts, many shapes, sizes, sounds. What in fact, have you any logical explanation to those who perhaps are unbelievers in the realms of non-tangible things? Can you explain how these things happen?
Well, I can only say that sometimes when people leave this world, if they especially leave this world under rather tragic circumstances, and they're not prepared to leave this world, and their span of life is not at an end, I think that they finish up in what I like to call no man's land, until their time is ready, or until they themselves want to progress to a higher sphere. I do believe that we go from sphere to sphere, and that this life that we're on now, is just a classroom or a schoolroom, and that we have to advance from class to class, as it were, and this is one of the times when people elect to stay here.
Well, now, in all your travels round, and you have visited probably a good 50% of the haunted houses in this country, what is the most interesting or, in effect, most frightening experience you've ever had?
One of the interesting experiences I had was at Sawston Hall near Cambridge. One night we went to spend the night there, and I went to bed and I slept in Mary Tudor's bed. She's reputed to have slept there before, the night before, just after she became Queen of England, and Northumberland was chasing her, and he wanted to intercept her before she got to London. And the house was burnt down, all except this bedroom, and her bed is still there. But the one experience that I had was fascinating to me, because every hour on the hour a man walked through the rooms, and he appeared to go towards the fireplace. And the only logical explanation I can give of this is that in the days when they had four-posters, and after all I was sleeping in one, they must have had a night watchman to go around building the fires, keeping them going, and he continued to do this.
Does it have to be the night time or the evening for you to find out if there is a ghost?
It doesn't have to be nighttime, but one doesn't feel that they want to get mixed up, get into the mood of communicating with a ghost if there are several hundred people around and crying children and such like. This isn't funny at all, and it isn't very conducive to my atmosphere, the atmosphere that I want for seeing a ghost.
Well, thank you for telling us about this.
It was a pleasure.
And this is Jennifer Gill, signing off from London, England. This is Jennifer Gill reporting from London, England.
Actors create a world of make-believe for others to enjoy, so one could excuse them if they tended to dwell in it themselves. However, Donald Sinden, who is a member of the London Appreciation Society and specializes in comedy rather than in the macabre, makes the supernatural sound real.
Referring back to the Haymarket Theatre when I was there, in the Victorian era, it was owned and run by a lovely old gentleman called Buxton, Mr. Buxton, and his ghost is supposed to haunt the theatre. And oddly enough, I'm one of the very few people who's actually seen it. When I was in the Heiress of this theatre for 18 months, Sir Ralph Richardson was in it, playing the leading part, and from my dressing room down to the stage, I had to pass his dressing room, outside of which was a window looking over Suffolk Street. And one night I'd received my call. I came down the stairs with one of the girls in the company, and she and I walked past, and there was, as we thought, Ralph Richardson looking out of the window. So we said, "Good evening, Ralph." And he didn't answer, but it didn't matter, so we carried on down. And we got round the next bend of the stairs when we suddenly thought, Ralph Richardson himself is on the stage. The curtain's up and he's on the stage. Can't have been him. So we raced back, and there's nobody there at all gone. And there was this figure. Both of us saw him, dressed in costume of about 1850. And it can only have been Buxton's ghost. Of course, the St. James's Theatre, which is now extinct, rather sad there. Emily Williams wrote a play called Murder Has Been Arranged. And in this was quoted a line from Macbeth, which to actors is supposed to be a very unlucky play. They never quote it. In fact, a lot of actors refer to the play as that Scottish play. And in the play, on the first night, nobody noticed anything because the nerves and all that sort of thing. But on the second night, when it came to this line, two of the actors swore that they heard a sort of fiendish laugh coming from up in the fly somewhere. That's right up at the top of the theatre. And the next night, when it came to the line, they listened for it again, and sure enough, when this line was spoken, from the flies came the most extraordinary laugh. This happened for about 3 nights, and they were certain that it must be one of the stage hands paying them up in the flies, you see. But 2 nights later, they waited to the end of the performance. All the audience went out, and all the actors had gone home, and these 2 actors, with the firemen of the theatre, toured the entire theatre, making sure there was nobody there at all. Sure enough, they went right through the theatre. Everyone was out. They locked each door behind them. There was no one there at all. And then, at roughly midnight, they went onto the bare, empty stage, and there's nothing more sinister than an empty theatre in the middle of the night anyway. And they went onto the stage, and one of the actors shouted this line from Macbeth, and from the flies came the most enormous, stentorian, fiendish laugh you've ever heard. And they've just fled from the theatre, and the fireman himself actually resigned his job after that, because he refused to stay in the same theatre.
And this is Jennifer Gill signing off from London, England. This is Jennifer Gill reporting from the county of Wiltshire in the southwest of England. Today, if you want to, you can look round about 300 stately homes of England. 150 years ago, 1 or 2 marquises and lords of England decided to open their houses to a few members of the public. And the first of these, or one of the first, was the second Marquis of Bath, who opened his home, Longleat. Now, sitting beside me is a descendant of the second Marquis, the 6th Marquis of Bath. Now, Lord Bath, can you please tell me, first of all the people that have lived or visited Longleat, have any of them left a mark in the form of their spirits? In other words, is it haunted?
Yes, I was the 2nd Viscount Weymouth, who unfortunately had one of his menials in the house who fell in love with his wife. And so he fought a duel with him upstairs in a passage by the old library, and killed this servant of his, and buried him somewhere in Longleat. And the lady, his wife, is supposed to haunt that passage. I personally have never seen her, but my mother, she was a very psychic person, and always felt, although she never saw, a very strange presence in that part of the house. And so have other people who've come down since.
Have you ever found any material evidence to back up the story? I mean, skeletons or anything like this of the man?
Yes, but of course nobody quite knows whether the skeleton found was the man actually buried by the 2nd Viscount. But when my father put in a new boiler for central heating, he had to lower the floor of the cellars. And when he lowered the floor, the man who was digging found the skeleton of a man with high jack boots on. And so he quite rightly thought, well, I'll pick up these jack boots and take them to his lordship to have a look at. When he touched one, of course, it fell to bits. And like the old story, he then thought, well, I'll pick up the other one and take it along. No. And so that fell to bits. And so nobody actually saw it except what the old man in about 1880 told us.
But the skeleton was intact?
The skeleton was there, yes. But there have been other skeletons found. There were some skeletons of some canons who used to occupy the site in the very old days before Longleat was born in about 1400, before Longleat was built. And one of these skulls was taken up by my parents, I remember very well, and put on the table in the front hall. And it so happened, coincidence or not, that whoever touched the skull, something awful happened to them. And what happened to me was that on the day I touched it and ran about with it on my head, I went out of my bicycle at the age of 6 and fell off it and broke my kneecap into absolute smithereens.
Goodness.
So after that, my father and mother thought it best to get rid of it, and they put it in the churchyard at Horningsham, which is our local village.
Rather a frightening thing.
Well, that was, yes, I suppose, yes.
Was it in fact, I suppose it was a very, very old skull, in good condition?
Well, it was 500 years old, yes, if you call that very old.
Lord Bath, thank you very much indeed. And this is Jennifer Gill signing off from the county of Wiltshire in the southwest of England, where we've been talking to the Marquis of Bath.